and welcome to another episode of the Marco Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. Today, I am talking again with Cortney Kaveh. She was on here the other week, and we talked about financial coaching for small businesses, and I wanted to have her back again so that we can talk about financial decluttering. So the new year is coming. We want to get those finances together and get them organized. So let's welcome Cortney back. How are you, Cortney?
Hey, Angel. Thanks for having me back. Excited to be here.
Thank you. I'm excited to have you back here again. I enjoyed our last conversation so much. So I can't wait to see what tips and nuggets you drop for us today.
Yay. Let's get into it.
Yes. So I'm just going to dive right in there head first because, as I said, it's the end of the year. You know, everyone's getting ready to make those New Year's resolutions. And I'm sure that saving money and doing better with money in 2024 is one of them. How can a person save money and pay off debt?
Oh, such a tricky time to be asking this question too, because for many people, this is the most expensive time of year. You are in knee deep in holiday planning, and you are looking towards the new year to sigh a little breath of relief, but then also you maybe panic because then there's the credit card bill. So let's talk about it.
Okay.
So I think that the number one biggest budget buster that I see in general is food. And so being very mindful of your food budget during this season can be great. That is one thing that most people can control better, I would say. And I only say that because I've been there. The first time I became aware of my food spending, I nearly had a heart attack. So I did what's called a post-mortem. You know, I looked the month before and analyzed how much I had spent on like groceries, coffee, takeout, and my jaw hit the ground. So if you have never done that before and you feel especially courageous, I would recommend starting there, because how do you know where you can save money if you're not really sure what your spending has been? So I would say start there, become aware of what your problem categories are, and then you can then make changes. So I will say that if you see your food spending is off the charts and you're like, that's it, I'm slashing everything. I appreciate your eagerness, but also we do need to be realistic, because when I've seen people just slash things in half or down to zero or whatever, that doesn't always set them up for success. And they get into a cycle of yo-yo budgeting where they will constrict and then binge and constrict and binge. And so I would recommend just slowly decreasing it over time to give yourself the best chance of success and to not engage in this process in a guilt and shame manner when you set yourself up to fail, frankly. So to answer your question, that's where I would start. But I would say be super mindful of the food spending, because that's an area that most people can be more mindful of during the holidays, especially with takeout and all that. There's more potluck situations. If you're hosting, ask people to bring something. If you're going somewhere, bring a dish. But like I said, take a look at your food spending, and that will then free up maybe some more money to pay off debt.
Okay. Thanks, Cortney. Yeah, I know my food spending is out of control. Well, it's not as bad now as it was before, but I've done that before. I've looked at my food budget and I'm like, oh my goodness, this budget is completely out of control. Yeah. And then, like you said, coffee. My mom one day, she's like, that's where all your money goes to, is coffee. And so I even started this thing one time where I would load like $10 on the card. I'm like, okay, that's my $10 for the week. Like, that's all I'm spending. Well, one drink costs about $5. That's not going to last you for 5 days out of the week. That's just not realistic, And I tried this other thing where I was like, $15 a week. That's my budget for food and everything. That lasted for a little bit of time. And now my son is in this phase. I think it had to be about 2 weeks ago. We went grocery shopping, and then I was just like joking. Well, I was joking, but not joking. I told my husband, I was like, well, let's go out to dinner. And he's like, we just got all these groceries. We need to eat we need to, cook what's in the house. And so then that Monday, my son's like, oh, I want to go out to eat. And my husband's like, no, we just got all these groceries. You need to eat the groceries. He's like, oh, Mommy, we should have never went grocery shopping, because now Daddy's making us eat all the house food. And I just want outside food. Like, we're never going to be able to eat outside food again. I'm like, dude, we can't eat out every single
Oh
day.
my
So yeah.
I love those two specific examples that you use, because the thing that I see as the biggest opportunity is we can't change the goal without changing the behavior. So like with the coffee, it's like, okay, if I'm going to set a $15 a week budget on my app and preload the card, I think that's brilliant, by the way. What behavior change can I start doing so that I don't overspend? Okay, I'm going to plan it out, right? Monday, Wednesday, Friday, going out to Starbucks. On the rest of the days, I'm brewing at home. So I will make a concrete plan of how I plan to achieve that. And I'll get very specific so that I feel like that's how I set myself up for success the best, is if I can really visualize how it's going to go.
Right.
And then with the restaurant, same thing. Okay, if we are setting a budget on eating out and we don't want to go over that amount, okay, what does that mean though? Okay, that means that we're going to go out to eat 1 time per week instead of 3 times per week. And we now have a written down plan of what the dinner is going to be each night, so that we can either prep it earlier in the day, or we just know, hey, I have food at home and this is what we're eating and it's going to be great. So that's how I like to personally set myself up for success, is I will kind of reverse engineer it and break it down and make it into simpler parts so that I have a better chance of actually doing it.
Right. No, that makes complete sense. And we did do like one time our day to eat out was every Wednesday. We would go out to eat every Wednesday. And then my son started back up with soccer. But I was so proud of us this soccer season, because like before, when he played sports and he had practice twice a week, we just automatically knew that, okay, after practice, we're going out and getting something to eat. But luckily, like the days that he had practice, those were my husband's work from home days. And so we were able, my husband was like, go get him after school, bring him home, and he could eat something. And then, I just beat him at the soccer field, and then I'd come home and eat something. So that helped out a lot.
Yes.
And then I fixed my coffee habit by, my husband bought me an espresso machine for our anniversary. And so I was like, woohoo, I can save $800 a month now. My mom was like, did you really spend that much on coffee? I said, I think I'm exaggerating, but part of me is like, am I really exaggerating here? So like you said, just finding little things that you can kind of do to save that money and maybe use it elsewhere. So
yeah, and you brought up a really good point without even knowing it. I work with a lot of busy families, and we've got kids in sports, we've got social events, we've got obligations. And what I've identified, even just like earlier this year, I think it was, I put a name to it. I'm like, oh my gosh, if you are so overextended with your time and you're too busy, you're overwhelmed, if your time flow is out of balance, your cash flow probably is too, because then your purchases become convenience purchases because you have no time, you're stressed out, maybe emotional eating, maybe just eating out of convenience out. And so that's a big thing. We're talking about financial organization. Let's talk about your calendar. Let's talk about time blocking. Let's talk about planning out the time in advance to dedicate to cooking, to grocery shopping, to meal planning. And by the way, meal planning does not need to be this complicated thing. I say meal planning, I'm not talking about like cooking all day on Sunday and batching food for the week. That's not even what I'm talking about. I just mean that, like I said before, the meals. What are you going to eat each night? Write it down. Write down the name. Shop according, like for your grocery list, shop according to that list of meals. So yeah, I love to draw the comparison between a time budget and a money budget, because they very oftentimes go hand in hand.
no, Courtney, I love that, because I am great with a time budget, but when it comes to a money budget, I'm not so great with that. And on your entrepreneur episode, we talked about, instead of calling it the B word, we said that we were going to call it
No spending plan.
yes, intentional spending plan. So yes, we are intentional spending plan. We are done with the B word, but
Yes. I'm so sorry. Yes, you're so right. I don't want to cuss on your show. I'm so sorry.
No, you're
yeah,
fine.
yeah.
Yeah, but so I'm great at like time block planning and like planning other things. And I have done the meal planning, and I was one of those people, I made it super complicated. And then I got frustrated with it, because we were doing that. We were spending like 2-3 hours on Sunday packing, like cooking, making sure that we had food for dinner and food for lunch. And then I was exhausted. I'm like, that's my whole Sunday gone. And so we kind of got away from that. And now we're doing more. The second thing that she said is just like, okay, we're going to go grocery shopping, and not even like we'll go grocery shopping. It's like, okay, we're going to get ground beef. We're going to get chicken. We're going to get this. And then we'll come home. We're like, okay, this is what we're going to have on Monday. And we've been doing, a lot of those, like, not packaged meals, but Publix has kind of like the Blue Apron type things where they have the meal with everything already prepared for you, and you just have to like mix the ingredients and stuff together. So we've been trying that out too, because that's also a time saver and a money saver, because everything's already prepackaged for you so that there's not waste left over or anything like that. So you're saving time and money with that.
Exactly. And by the way, I just went to a Publix for the very first time. I'm on the west. Okay, I know I'm on the West Coast, and
Okay, that's right.
I was just in Florida for 6 days, and we went to Publix many times. And oh my gosh, can I say those salad packs, like the pre-made one? Oh my gosh, they're so good. I'm like, why don't we have Publix open? So,
oh my gosh, please tell me you got a pub sub while you were there.
I heard about them. I did not.
Oh
We were busy. I was putting on a conference. I was the MC and keynote speaker for a conference, but so I didn't have time to really enjoy Publix that much, but
Okay.
they have a reputation, those pub subs.
Oh yes, yes. And my coworker just recently put me onto. He's like, you got to get the pub sub and get some of the boar's head sub dressing on it. And I was like, oh, I've never heard of that before. And I'm like, I usually just do oil and vinegar. He's like, no, try the boar's head pub sub dressing. And I was like, okay. So I tried it and I was like, oh, this is good. So I actually bought a bottle that we have at the house. So I'm so sorry that you don't have a Publix on the West Coast. If I could like.
You know what it was, Angel? The reason why I didn't get a pub sub, the line was so long. And so we didn't have the time to wait and hang out. We just kind of were in and out doing our trip, but they're a thing. They're a whole vibe. And I went to Aldi for the first time too.
Oh, okay. How did you like Aldi?
It was great. I got to go down the aisle of shame, and it was so fun. I found something that I really like. So anyway, it was fun to experience a little bit more of the East Coast than I have in the past. So
well, cool. I'm glad you got the experience. If I could wrap up a pub sub for you and send it to you and think that it still be good, I would. But you're gonna have to wait till the next time you come back over here. So I know that you also told me that you and your family paid off like a lot of debt. And would you say like 3.5, 4 years? Like how? If you don't mind sharing, how much did you all pay off, and like how did you do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we paid off about $145,000 in 4 years and 9 months, and our starting income was very little, and we worked up to more at the end of that time. But we did some things that were not super popular, I would say. We live in the instant gratification culture, and so we learned how to say no, like N-O. It's a complete sentence. It's a thing. So
yes.
But we didn't just say no. It's not all about that. We did still plan for fun, but we got a lot better with our own personal boundaries. And we had a rule. We don't let other people spend our money. As soon as we decided that was really important. So we didn't feel obligated to do all the things, right? So we didn't let other people spend our money and feel obligated to do this or that. So we got better saying no. We used a budget, intentional spending plan.
Yes.
And we just got super intentional about our spending and tracking our expenses all month long. And so that's how we stay on top of it. You can't just use a budget and get to the end of the month, look back and be like, well, that happened. We knew all month long where our money was going because we were telling it where to go. And so we did the whole Dave Ramsey thing. I read Dave Ramsey's Complete Guide to Money, told my husband, I was like, hey, we got to do something. And that was coming from me, who I told you before, big spender. So I didn't care at all. And so then he agreed to do Financial Peace University with me. We did it in person at our church. And that really got us on the same page. So I work with a lot of couples. And if you're listening to this and you're saying, yeah, Cortney, that's nice. I'd love to pay down my debt and do all this, but my spouse is not on board. There is hope. So just one example is that we did FPU together. I didn't know that financial coaching was a thing at the time. Otherwise, a coach would have been very helpful to me in that process, a third party, so that my husband didn't just have to hear it from me, right?
Right.
Thankfully, he agreed to do the class with me. And then from there, we were on the same page. So we got very intentional about our spending. We learned to say no. We, drove older cars. Like we had older cell phones. We didn't care about keeping up with the Joneses because the Joneses were broken in debt, right? Like, you just never know someone's financial situation just on the outset. You can compare and say, oh, they have this or they have that, and you just really never know. It was hard for us to see our friends going to like Europe and doing all these amazing things. So we didn't have kids yet at that time, and that was difficult to see, but at the same time, we got to just work hard, feel really good about what we did, and then be freed up to start to build wealth and be more generous. And then we did end up having 2 kids during that time. He finished his degree. I went back to school, finished my degree. Like we moved states. A lot of life happened in there. I will say we saved 6 months off our journey by moving to Oregon. We lived in California, and it's an expensive place to live. And so we were able to get out of debt faster because of the move as well.
Okay. Cool. Thank you for sharing that, Cortney. And I completely agree with not trying to keep up with the Joneses. And there's actually a movie. I haven't watched it in years, but I talk about it like a lot. And me and my husband, we always talk about the movie because we actually saw it together. I think we were someplace and we like caught it halfway through. But anyways, we ended up going out and buying it. But it's a movie. It's called The Joneses, and I think Demi Moore is in it.
Oh.
But I don't know if you've ever heard of it or seen it. But so quick synopsis, it's about this family, and it's the wife, the husband, and 2 kids, and the kids are like teenagers, and they move into this neighborhood. They move into the biggest house on the block. They have like all the latest tech stuff. The kids have all the latest clothes, video games, all the latest cars, and all this stuff. And so then their neighbor sees them with, all this stuff, and he's trying to go out and like keep up with it and go out and buy all this stuff that they're buying. And so he goes out and buys like the same car that the guy has, and then like 2 days later the guy gets a bigger, better car. And he's like, oh. And so the guy unfortunately ends up taking his own life because he was trying to keep up with them and he couldn't keep up with it. And we as the audience know this, but of course they don't know. It's all fake. Like the people aren't even actually married. That's not their kids or anything. They're all actors that they're all employed by this company. And the company basically sends people out into different neighborhoods and locations and gives them all the latest stuff to get other people to go out and spend money on it and buy it. And so I just always think about that when like somebody's like, oh, I'm just trying to keep up with this person, or I'm just trying to be like this person. I'm like, you don't know how they got that. In the back of my mind, I'm like, a company probably paid them to have that. And now you're out here spending all your money on it just to get it. And we actually had one of our old neighbors. He went out one time and bought like this $200-$300 bottle of cologne because another one of the neighbors was talking about it. And we know for a fact that like he did not have the money to buy it. Come to find out, the other neighbor was like getting it for free, or the other neighbor was only using samples of it. Like, yeah.
That's
Yeah.
wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, and I didn't know, but maybe that's where the saying come from. That movie comes from that. Maybe?
Yeah. Well, I don't know, because that movie's like, it's not old. Like it was
Okay.
probably, like the saying's been around longer than that. I think the movie came from the saying. So
Got it. Okay.
yeah. So
Oh my
yes.
gosh.
Yeah, but it's definitely an interesting movie. So so while y'all were paying off your debt, were you able to save money? Because I know like sometimes I hear people say, oh, yeah, it's important to pay off debt, but you also want to save money. So were y'all able to save while you were paying off the debt?
Yeah, so here's the thing. We maintained a small emergency fund. If you're familiar with Dave Ramsey's Baby Steps, he recommends saving $1,000. And so we did save $1,000 and kept that for emergencies only. However, if you have other bigger expenses coming up, let's say you pay your car insurance bill by the 6-month increments and you owe that, or you have Christmas and usually spend money on that, or that you have a vacation coming up. Yes, like we did save money beyond $1,000, but for things that were expected and that we had to plan ahead for. That's called a sinking fund. When you set money aside month over month to save up for something that's coming down the pipeline that you know about. So for true emergencies, we saved $1,000. And then for other savings and things we had coming up, yes, we definitely set aside money for that. And the only reason we can do that, Angel, is because we chose to live below our means. So you asked me a question, how can a person save money and pay off debt? You have to learn to live below your means, not at your means, but below, because then you are creating that breathing room, that margin to have money for things like savings, or if you have kids, like saving up for their college or private school or like whatever your thing is, the only way you're going to be able to do that is if you are living below your means.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Mhm.
And so, how can someone get started with setting money goals and organizing their finances?
Yeah, great question. So, if you are married, then that would be a conversation between you and your spouse of developing and writing down shared financial goals. If you are single, then it's having a time of vision casting by yourself or with an accountability partner or your best friend. What are your financial, what's important to you? What are your values and your priorities? What are you willing to say no to in order to say yes to the things that are important to you? And then from there, you can set financial goals. Okay, if I said that this thing is a priority and important to me, then is spending money on eating out going to hinder me from meeting that? What's actually important to me? If all my money's going over here, but I said that this is important, I need to line up my actions with my goals. So I would identify what is most important to you and what are you willing to decrease or say no to in order to shift more money towards that goal.
Okay, I like that. That makes me kind of think back to earlier when we were talking about coffee. Like, if, and then you were talking about Europe. Like, okay, if I really want to go on this European trip with my friends, like, what's more important, saving for that or spending $50 a week on coffee? So, just being conscious and mindful of the goals that you're setting and that you're sacrificing one thing for something bigger or something greater that you said you really wanted.
Totally. And this may sound harsh, but show me your calendar, show me your bank account, and I'll show you what your priorities are, right? And that's why I said becoming aware is the most important part, because maybe you're just simply not aware of where your money is going. And so once you see that, you're like, ooh, this must be very important to me. All my money's going towards it. If I don't value that, I need to change my behavior so that I can save up for this thing over here that truly is important to me. There's an opportunity cost with spending money on things that aren't actually very important to you in the long run.
Okay. And so that made me think of another question as well. So, like, when I'm like really into it and trying to be intentional with my spending, one thing that I did, it was a while ago, but I took out, so on Sundays, I would fill up my car. I would go ahead and fill my car up with gas. And then I would take like $20 to $30 out of the bank and I would just leave my debit card at home. And that was my money that I had for the week. So everything I had to do, I paid cash in it. And if I ran out of cash on Wednesday, like that was just it. I couldn't do anything else. Would you say that that is a good habit? And would you say that if you're trying to be intentional about your spending, using cash is better than using a card? What's your take on thoughts on that?
Oh, I love that question. Oh, you ran out of money and you stopped spending? Like, what a concept. I love that for you. I do recommend doing that with certain categories. So you may be familiar with the terms cash envelopes or cash stuffing, and it's like a whole thing.
Yes.
I do recommend doing that for certain categories that are a temptation for you. So let's say that I have a tendency of overspending on groceries and just fun impulse, like little things, or coffee, let's call it that. Then that's a great idea to cash out those categories. So I can either do like a little envelope, or I'm getting a cute little plastic organizer, like at the dollar store, you can just kind of put money in the slots. And I can call it grocery money, coffee money, fun money. And by the way, fun money is a great thing to include in your intentional spending plan, because if you don't allow yourself that little impulse or that little, like, just, I call it your sanity money, then you might go crazy in this process and do a little bit of that yo-yo budgeting that I had talked about before that turns into a bad thing, right? So yeah, cashing out your categories where you tend to want to overspend on can be wonderful, natural guardrails for you. And you're setting yourself up better for success. And you're retraining your mind to learn that instant gratification is not a right fit for you, because you said that these things over here are important. But if you're tempted and you're overspending, then there goes that money, right?
Okay. Okay. No, that makes sense. And I've seen the cash envelopes. I've never actually done them and given them a try, but that is something that I may look into. We're either going back to just like taking out a certain amount for the week and sticking with that. So,
Yeah. And here's one more approach that I teach is if you don't like the B word like we talked about before, and you're like, oh, I really not about that. Here's a great alternative. You can have two accounts. You can have one account and do auto pay bills out of that account, and then you can create just a simple either cash plan or use a app, a software if you want, and you have your discretionary money over here. So you've got bill money and spending money, and so then maybe your cash envelopes are just for those spending categories: groceries, gas, fun money, the things that vary each month, and they're not an auto pay bill. So that's another thing you could try.
oh, cool. Actually, I do that. Because like one day I was like sitting down, like you were talking about, and I was like looking at my bank account stuff, and I'm like, okay, where's all my money going? Like, what is happening here? And so like me and my husband, we have a joint account, but then we also have like our separate accounts and stuff like that. So I have an account where I guess, like you said, my fund money or my extra money goes into, and then I have another account where my car payment comes out of, and I have my direct deposit set up that that money for my car payment automatically, like each paycheck, I put half of what my car payment is into that account. So I don't ever actually see it, because I think that was something that used to bother me, is like I'd see it in my account and then it's gone for the car payment. I'm like, but I just had this money. Where did it go? So that is
Exactly.
something that I definitely do for my stuff that's auto drafted. So
Yeah, and if you're listening to this and you're thinking like, oh, my regular approach is more bank balance budgeting. I look at my bank account balance and that's how I make decisions. If that's more you, then that's a great approach, because if you never see the money and it just goes straight towards bills, then you can truly make better decisions, because more informed decisions, because the money over here in your spending account is actually what you have available to spend on these XYZ variable expenses.
right. No, it does. It's helped me a lot. It's really helped me like a good bit with that. So yeah, I think that's a great tip. And it's something like easy that you can try. I mean, you can get a bank account set up in 2 seconds, and most of the time your direct deposits are electronic, and you can break them down into, I want X amount either in percent. I know with mine, I can break it down. So I want 25% to go here, or I can be like, I want $25 to go here, however I would choose to do it. So
Exactly. Yeah, that's
yeah.
great.
So what should a person do if they feel like anxious or just unmotivated when it comes to like decluttering and looking at and organizing their finances? What advice would you give to them?
I would get really clear with what your goals are, first of all, because if you don't know what you're working for towards, of course you're not going to feel motivated. So let's say you want to buy another vehicle or you want to go take a vacation. So identify what those things are for you if you're feeling unmotivated. And then if you need support, that's a great opportunity to reach out to someone who helps people with emotional issues when it comes to money. And perhaps that could be a counselor or a therapist. If there is more old wounds or trauma or things that are very much preventing you from even thinking about addressing your finances, then perhaps seeing a counselor or a therapist is really great. Financial coaches are more future focused, I would say. They're not going to be helping address old wounds, so to speak, like a licensed therapist would, but they're going to help you make a very tangible plan going forward. So if you're feeling brave enough to start to confront it, then that's when a coach can help you put structure around and then help you learn how to organize and prioritize the money from there.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Well, Courtney, it has been such a pleasure talking to you. Like I usually do not like talking about intentional spending or talking about like getting money organized, but you have just made me feel so at ease with this conversation, and you just made it an enjoyable conversation. And it's not like, I feel like a lot of times when you talk about like money, or you talk to like a financial coach, or you go to like a money class, it's always so stiff and just like uptight and kind of scary, and it's like, you shouldn't be doing this with your money, you shouldn't be doing that. But you just made it so relaxing and so fun, and it's like, oh, okay, well, hey, I do that. And you gave actual tangible and achievable things that can be done, like the tips and stuff that you gave, and the things that you talk about. They're things that anyone can do that you can literally like start with today. It's not something that you got to like plan for, think about, or anything like that. Like, I mean, you can literally go log into your bank account right now and look. And I think most banks have where it shows you like the tracker of this is where most of your money goes. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Are there any other tools or tips that or advice that you would like to share before we go?
Yeah, thank you so much, Angel. And if you're wanting more tips and tricks on getting organized with your finances, be sure to sign up for my newsletter on my website. It's northwestmoneycoaching.com. And every month I send out I'm going to say it real quick, a monthly budgeting guide. And basically it's a checklist just saying, hey, here's what's coming up in the next month probably for you. Make sure to plan ahead for those things so you can incorporate those into your intentional spending plan. I would also say a couple of great tools. I mentioned it on the last episode, but a couple of great simple, one simple budgeting tool, one more advanced simple budgeting tool. It's called Every Dollar. And the more advanced one, I would say if you like spreadsheets and getting nitty gritty with those things like me, you're more of a nerd. YNAB is a great one. YNAB, YNAB. And yeah, that's what I got.
Okay. And I'll definitely link those in the show notes as well. And can you tell everyone where to find you at?
Yes. I'm on Instagram. Mostly that's where I hang out, Cortney.Kaveh, and then northwestmoneycoaching.com. You can find all the things there.
Okay, awesome. Well, Cortney, thank you so much. I have enjoyed this conversation with you, and I really appreciate your time, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Angel. You too.
Thank you. Great tips. Loved her time management episode. Applicable tips for everyday life. Thank you so much, mfletch81. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Modco Podcast. I hope that you enjoy this episode and learned something from it. Be sure to share this episode with a friend, family member, colleague, or anyone that you think will enjoy it. Make sure you also hit the like and subscribe button. If you love the podcast, please leave us a 5-star rating and review on the podcast app you're tuning into. That helps others to find us and gets us listed in other shows' recommendations. And if you would like to financially support the podcast, you can click on the listener support link in the episode show notes. Thank you so much, and I'll talk to you next time.